start with, I'm not going to talk about hormones and I'm not going to talk about detoxing, which are things that you possibly have heard about. I'm going to start somewhere very different. And the different place I'm going to start with is acupuncture. And I know that we don't live in a linear surface, but I'm going to do some presentations on the board so you can see where I'm going. So to start with, to be here in a body, we have something called yin and something called yang. Now this is an acupuncture thought, but it means that you can divide anything. Now up until now you might have thought this was male and this is female. But this is about our belief systems and how we construct things. So from an acupuncture framework, we would put what we believe to be science and rational and things that we can validate over on the side of structure and density. Now I'm saying this because when we want proof, we need facts. And the facts we're going to ask for are these ones over here. Is there research data on it? There is another side of life which we could call resonance or we could call vibration, and it also deals with the energy or the feelings or whatever. So what we as women often default to, it doesn't feel right. And the men might want to know, well, why not? Because it doesn't feel right, but why not? Sometimes it just is. So from an acupuncture framework, when we're looking at our bodies and whether we're going to get pregnant or not, I'm going to be over here and everything else you've possibly seen is over on this side. So if it sounds different, it is, and please stop me if you don't understand something because it doesn't matter. So going on from there, this is a fact from acupuncture. Women have 7-year cycles and men have 8-year cycles. So that means that when we hit puberty, it should be 2 times whatever this is. When we hit menopause or the male equivalent, it should be 7 times whatever this is. So that is how come little girls mature faster, because they do, and this is how come men seem to take longer in their puberty years and growing up and so forth, because they do. So I'm going to allude to this in a minute when I'm talking about something called Jing. Now this is very definitely an acupuncture term. You know it as egg quality and the sperm. But from an acupuncturist, if I'm going to do anything with your fertility, I have to play with your Jing. So I'm going to talk about how we come about this. From an acupuncture framework, we're not going to talk about hormones. We're going to talk about energy, which we call qi, and I'm going to talk about blood and Jing and something called Shen. So to unpack this further, if we're talking about Jing, that's your sperm and eggs. So if you were going off to an IVF clinic, they'd be wanting to do the quantity, but they're not going to look at the quality. So I'm going to talk about how we can change what we're doing. So in changing what we're doing, we start at the beginning. At the beginning, I've got teaching tools. So at the beginning, I've got a chart which you can look at later. And basically, we all start and we go round the circle. And we've got prescribed times that we do this in. So normally, we've got puberty happening at 2 times 7. We're biologically very ready to have babies at 3 times 7. This is women. And come 6 times 7, we should have done all of that and be off doing our own thing. So here we go at 42. In this culture, still not having gotten to here because we've changed it around. So a number of you are probably sitting in here wondering, well, what am I doing? We can recreate. I'm not saying it's optimal, but we can recreate quality issues. So to do that, when we come back to looking over here, I'm not talking about hormones. I'm talking about how can we really change what's happening. And to do that, what do we put in our mouths? Anything we feel like. That's how we fuel ourselves. So in order to fuel ourselves, I've done another poster, which again I'm not going to drag all the facts into, which you can look at later. Briefly, there's only one line that talks about what you're putting in your mouth. The rest of it is everything else you do in your life. So we've divided into the top, the middle and the lower sections. So if I'm looking at the top section of this thing that I could call a food factory, this is where I'm breathing from, and it's divided between the top and the middle by my diaphragm. Now, if I'm not giving myself enough space, not only can I not get enough air in and my heart can't do what it's needed to do, but the middle bit there is all crumpled over. And so the middle bit's not going to be digesting food and the poo's not going to be flowing and so forth. So most of us are going to sit at a desk or at a computer, and once we're sitting in there, whether it's a chair or a car seat or whatever, we sort of become unconscious because our minds are very busy. And this bit here has to try and make it anyway. And so if we're in a great rush and we put some food in, and then we go like this, we're not doing the best for it. And then the next bit down here, well, this has got whether we're having orgasms, this has got whether we're storing all the fat and frustration, this has got whether we're even pooing, and then, you know, I know I've broken my coccyx. So structurally things aren't going to necessarily be as they were designed. And so in order to undo I'm not getting pregnant, we have to look at, does this work? Forget about the sperm and the egg, we'll worry about them later. It's just like, does this work? Now for women, what are the periods doing? If the periods aren't what I would say perfect, then the answer is I've got to sort that out first. For men, it's more tricky because you don't have periods, and so I've got to ask impertinent questions, and I've got to expect that the tests from the medical people are showing what they need to do. So when we're looking at Jing, where does that come from? It comes from our parents. And so if I do another line, and we talk about impact of influences on a person's life, and this is something I got from an old Chinese doctor. If we see ourselves as starting at conception and at death we are finalised, a third of the way through on this chart of impact of influences on a person's life, we will have birth, and 2/3 of the way through we will have 10 years of age, and a half of the way through we will have 2 years, which means that the person who carries us inside her, whether or not we're raised by her, carries a third of the influence or the impact of anything that's going to happen to us. So how mum's feeling about being with dad, how mum feels about everything, is going to be the soup by which that little being is washed through. So all of her biological messages from mum. Because Dr. Shen's framework was based on his probably 60 years of paying attention to people, and that's all he did, take their pulse to really feel what was going on for them. And so who we are when we are pregnant and who our mothers were when she was pregnant with us dictates our default setting, I think, probably more than the egg that we're worrying about at the moment.